Thank you for tuning in to the Movie Geeks United 40th anniversary celebration of John Carpenter's Assault on Precinct 13. For this episode, we've delved through the archives of our sibling show Back by Midnight to bring you this conversation with Mr. Austin Stoker, the lead actor in the film.
2 years before making his splash with the iconic horror movie Halloween, genre technician John Carpenter made a low-budget actioner that combined Howard Hawks' Rio Bravo and George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, set in the urban jungle of Los Angeles. The movie was the grindhouse staple Assault on Precinct 13, a lean and mean piece of filmmaking that showed economical direction and no bull ensemble acting can elevate any story to greatness. From its minimalist score to tough guy dialogue, to beautifully timed burst of violence, Assault on Precinct 13 is a model for any young filmmaker to follow if looking how to make a film on a budget. Getting his start with a guest spot on the TV show The Mod Squad, veteran character actor Austin Stoker has been a presence on TV and in the movies and on the stage for almost 40 years. His first major screen role was as McDonald in 1975's Battle for the Planet of the Apes. He would follow this up with roles in big-budget fare like Airport 75 and exploitation classics like The Zebra Killer and Sheba Baby, where he played Pam Grier's sidekick, Brick Williams. As Lieutenant Ethan Bishop, the by-the-book officer who is put in charge of a band of criminals and office workers in Assault on Precinct 13, he holds the audience's attention by forcing us to come to him and try to figure out what he is going to do next. Working off of the late Darwin Jostin's funny, cool performance as Napoleon Wilson, Precinct 13 predated the 80s action movie trope of salt and pepper partnerships forged in mistrust only to lead to a grudging admiration. Since then, he's been in movies and TV shows as varied as Roots, Lou Grant, The Incredible Hulk, Arliss, The District, Sleeper Cell, Machete Joe. It is my pleasure to welcome veteran character actor Austin Stoker.
Yes, Aaron. How you doing, man?
How you doing, my brother?
I'm doing fine. I'm fighting a cold here, so my voice might be kind of shaky right now. But listen to that music from that movie, man. What's that movie, Assault on Precinct 13? I'd love to see that movie. The music sounds so great.
Yeah.
As a musician and percussionist myself, it sounds like great music for a pole dancer.
And I'm sure it's been used once or twice.
Fantastic rhythm, man. That music is so great.
Well, before we get to Precinct 13,
yeah.
Let's start a little earlier. What drew you to acting in the beginning?
I think maybe being an only child and play acting all the time, and growing up with a lot of good American and British movies. Being raised in the Caribbean and Trinidad, we were exposed mostly to British fare.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, my first thought about when I got old into my teenager was that I'd have to go to England to attend RADA or LAMDA,
right,
London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts. But I ended up in New York, and that was it, So I would say, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Was there a movie or an actor when you were a kid that you latched onto early on? There
were several, because growing up in the Caribbean, and being exposed to that, besides sports, exposed to the movies, all of us as kids, I don't know who else became an actor other than me. I'm probably the only one from Trinidad, but we sort of emulated all those actors, from John Wayne all the way, up to Marlon Brando later on, and Glenn Ford, and James Cagney. All of those American actors and gangster movies and the Tarzan movies, and growing up in an island, you swim naturally. You're surrounded by water. You don't have a choice. We all learned to swim on our own, and we would imitate, Johnny Weissmuller and all that sort of stuff, and imagine we being chased by crocodiles, which you would not. So it's hard to say any one particular, actor, but as you get older and you mature, and you learn the craft, then you begin to make your choices. Like I'm so amazed by the way Brando and all people like Marlon Brando and all of those who studied the method, which I myself did, and you see what the craft is all about. So I don't think we really can point to a favorite until we get older. At least for me, anyway.
Well, and as I stated in my intro. If I'm not mistaken, if I have the timeline correctly, your first big notice in a feature film was the Planet of the one of the Planet of the Apes films. I don't remember the chronology. Was this the third or fourth Apes film?
It was the last of the series. There were 5 altogether. It was number 5. Battle for the Planet of the Apes.
And how did you get that role? How did that come about?
Well, I was sent by my agent to audition, to read for a part on a Saturday morning at 20th Century Fox Studio, and that was it. I went there and did my audition, and then I was told by the director to come back in about 45 minutes, and I was very clearly saying that. He said, don't hang around, just, leave, go get some coffee, and come back in 45 minutes. So I wanted to be obedient, and I timed it on my watch. And I was back at exactly 45 minutes. And the other actors who were there for the part, no one else was there. I was the only one that returned, so I thought, something must be up, what's going on?
Right.
And I went into the room, and they said, we'd like you to do the role of MacDonald. I said, well, thank you. I would like to do that. That was it. And then the director made a remark. He said, your voice quality is quite similar to the actor whose brother you're playing, which was Harry Rhodes.
Right.
Yeah, because he played the lieutenant governor, I think, in the previous episode, and he died or was killed or whatever in the story. And his surviving brother takes over, which was the role I played. So that was it. That's how I ended up doing it.
Well, I got to ask about a couple of titles, and that I got to ask about Sheba Baby.
Sheba Baby.
Because, interestingly enough, you did not really get caught up, amazingly enough, in the blaxploitation craze.
No, I did not.
You did not. And before I ask you about Sheba Baby, was that by choice, or is that just the way it turned out?
Well, it was partly by choice, because there's a kind of a snobbishness, to use of a better word, when you initially train in the theater, as opposed to just training in film and taking camera technique and so on. When you train in the theater, you're trained to use your vocal quality more and all that sort of thing, and the way you present yourself on stage, because on stage it's like you're constantly in a master shot, if you can compare it to film. There are no close-ups or anything like that except in the audience's mind. So when you come across a script that doesn't sort of align with what you've been trained to do, you feel that it's not something that you can do.
Right. So
that was my take on it until I learned, hey, that's where the money is. By then the exploitation was over.
Well, and also it was I guess it was interesting, I'm sure you knew this, that a lot of great stage actors, African American stage actors, were doing these films. I think, and I can't believe I'm forgetting his name, but the actor who played, who did Blackula.
Oh yes, he was a very good friend of mine. William Marshall.
Right. I mean, so and these were, and some of these other, actors, who did theater, but then they were, they would do, you could say respectable theater, high-end theater, but then, as you said, the money was in the blaxploitation stuff. Right.
Well, it wasn't so much in the genre, but it was in movies, in particular,
Right.
In fact, when I did move to California from New York, it was through the urging of a friend of mine, a comedian. It was a friend of my wife and myself, Kay Ballard, who had moved out from New York to L.A. before us, and said, you got to come out here because, in New York you only do theater. Here, if you want to do film and television, you got to come to California.
Right.
So that's why I came to California to do film and theater. And my acting teacher in New York said, "You're selling out." I said, "Goodbye."
Well, and I got to ask you about Sheba Baby, because you have one of the great, there are a lot of great names in that genre of film, but you have a great one, Brick Williams.
Brick Williams.
But so tell me about working with Pam Grier, who was, a veteran of these films.
Pam Grier was a doll. I love Pam Grier. I haven't seen her since we did the film.
Oh, really?
But, we got along great together. We were both very young at the time, and I can say the experience that I have now, I didn't have then. I didn't know too much about film. I was just learning, and I would assume that she was also. That's where we cut our teeth. But we were like two kids, we were having a good time and, just enjoying it and doing what we were told,
Right.
At that stage, I could almost do my own stunts, jumping over. Well, I used to be a soccer player and ran track anyway, so I was quite, agile, jumping over fences and stuff.
The other film, and I guess it's kind of funny that you were in the final installment of the Planet of the Apes series, but you were also in, I guess, the second installment in the Airport series, Airport 75, if I have my notes correct.
Airport 75, yes. Yeah. That was not connected to the to the Apes film,
No, but you were in another, I guess you could say, movie series. You were.
Yes. I see what you're saying. Yes. Airport 75, yes.
And was that also just an audition that you went in on an audition?
Yeah, usually, I don't know how much. I don't think the business has changed that much. You still have to go in and read, and sometimes you read for the casting director, who will then, have you read for the next. If you go the next step, then you would be reading for the director or the producer, or or both, or the writer, or all three.
So I guess we'll get into John Carpenter now. So how did that come about? Because if I understand correctly, this was not a quote unquote a big. Obviously, this was not a studio film. So how did you hear about this script, and what was the casting process like on this film?
On Assault?
Yes, on Precinct 13.
Darwin Justin. They're the prisoner. We were friends, and we were in a actors workshop together. And Darwin was a friend, or I think, or neighbor of John Carpenter's. And he was the one that told me about this film he's going to do, and I would be perfect for this particular role, and he would tell John Carpenter. And then John Carpenter realized, he had seen me in Assault, and he wanted to meet me. And we had lunch, and I had the job.
Wow.
That was, Darwin made John aware of me. I reminded him, so to speak, and he called me, and we had lunch, and that was it. That's how I got it.
And how long was that shoot? I imagine, since it was it was a movie on a budget, I imagine this wasn't a elaborate shooting days. I can't imagine this was only a few weeks, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know how long the whole thing was altogether. I mean, I was not there every single day, but my part was done in about 3 weeks, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they probably had about 5 or 6 weeks altogether. I'm totally guessing. But like I said, I was not there. I was not there in the very beginning or the very end.
Right.
And I was, I probably went in after they were in it for about a week or two, and by the time I was finished, they had more stuff to shoot, and I was done.
And so when you got Carpenter, you all had lunch, and he gave you this role. And so when you read it, what did you think when you read it, or was it just a job for you, or did you see something special in this?
Well, it becomes just a job after you've done it, and you don't want to, go to the theater and see it necessarily. You've done the work,
right,
and it's done, and you don't really become entertained by it, which is a terrible thing, because you usually enjoy the work of others more than you enjoy your own. You know
right.
what I'm saying? I don't know what kind of a syndrome that is, but like most actors hate watching themselves on screen or television, but you enjoy others.
Mm-hmm.
So, once you get the job, you're totally committed to it, 150%, and then when it's over, it's done. You don't go back on it. So during the working period, you're there in the moment, and you're doing it, and it's totally almost consuming. And that's how it's approached.
One of my favorite bits early on in the film is you've arrived at the precinct and it's closing down, and you're talking to the head person in charge of the office. I forget Lee, but I forget the actress's name. And she offers you a cup of coffee.
Nancy Loomis. It was Laurie Zimmer.
Yeah, Laurie Zimmer.
Right.
And she offers you a cup of coffee, and I guess she's offering how you take it, and she says black, and you say for almost 30 years.
Almost 30 years.
Now I gotta ask, was that in the script or was that an ad lib?
That was in the script.
That was in the script.
Oh yeah. I guess that was Ethan Bishop's silly sense of humor. Mm-hmm. That's how I took it,
Yeah. Well, it's a great line. It's a great icebreaker. Mm-hmm. And I've always wondered if that was like I said, an ad lib or something in the script.
That was in the script. Yeah. I think the line that was my favorite line that made me laugh a hell of a lot was Tony Burton's line. Remember Tony Burton?
Right.
When he's about to leave and go down into the manhole to escape and help the rest of us, and he's about to leave, and he says, "Nobody gonna wish me luck." And Laurie Zimmer and I, in unison, say, "Good luck." And he says, "Look at that. 2 cops wishing me luck. I'm doomed." That used to crack me up. It was all I could do not to laugh while they were shooting. 2 cops wishing me luck. I'm doomed.
And how was, I mean, these are a lot of your stuff, most of your stuff is at night, so I guess it was night shoots. And how was Carpenter as a director? This was his second film, and this was even, and like I said at the top, this was before, quote unquote, Halloween, where he really became a named filmmaker. So how was being directed by? Did it make a difference to you if you were directed by a veteran director or someone relatively new?
No, not really. That's actors don't usually think that way. The minute you go in, you already, in your mind, you agree to the situation. This is your director, whether he's, somebody whether it's Steven Spielberg or not.
Right.
This is the director. He's the boss on the set, and you're there to, to do what is called for by your character in the way it's written. So I would say that first of all, he's an absolute joy to work with. I haven't seen him in years. And he, I remember mostly about him that he always kept a cool head. He focused on the work and, had no sort of anxieties that showed about anything. I mean, there's certain hardships that may exist in making a feature motion picture on an independent basis, but he was always approachable if you needed something explained or any other form of help,
Right.
And and appreciate it because it's not always so easy to get. He was the writer and he understood the material better than anyone else. He was always open to discussing any ideas, Because I remember that very last shot when I have to shoot and blow up the thing up on the wall there. We did about 3 or 4 takes, and he said to me, "Austin, I don't know what it is you're doing, but I love it."
And this was kind of one of the pluses of, you could say, grindhouse cinema, exploitation cinema, in that the fact that you were the hero and Darwin Jostin was the quote-unquote the bad guy to a certain extent,
right,
or the anti-hero to a certain extent. And the fact that in a big studio film, you know, one would assume that an African American would not be the hero. If he was going to be in the film, he would be in the Darwin Jostin role, kind of the heavy role.
right.
But this was kind of an interesting thing in exploitation cinema that you were the hero and Darwin Jostin was kind of the kind of amoral character, if you will.
Well, they did switch that in the remake, didn't they?
Yeah, they went more conventional. So I was wondering.
Did you tip them off? Did you tip them off, Aaron?
I don't know. Well, so I was. Well, you know, we can bring that in here, and I was wondering if at the time, did that even was that a thought that crossed your mind? Like, wow, I'm actually the hero.
No.
No.
It never occurred to either Darwin or myself that way. And like I said, you know, Darwin and I were friends. You know, we were buddies. Yeah. We happened to be, you know, we saw each other almost because the workshop met on Monday evenings, like from 7 to 10, you know, and then we hang out. I don't know if you're familiar with L.A., but there's a very well-known restaurant called Jerry's Deli.
Right.
You know, in Studio City. It was right above Jerry's Deli. It's still there. The workshop is still there. And we'd hang out downstairs, the bar or the restaurant, all of us. And so, you know, we were friends. So there was none of that. He got me the part anyway. You know, so we never thought of that. Supported each other, and it was just a joy to work like that, you know. And you know, when you're working, I think one reason why we get hooked on being actors is that you can lose yourself into this situation that you enjoy, and once you're doing it, you're not thinking of that. You know. I remember once being asked about in the Apes film, how did I feel about the way it was written in some people's writings, the fact that the Planet of the Apes was sort of a commentary on human, you know, the humans relate to each other and the different positions in life between the brown apes, the orangutans being the intelligentsia and the black ones being the militants. And we said, well, no, that doesn't occur to us when we're acting. You know, when somebody asks you, you're thinking of it for the first time. You know, you don't become so, you know, intellectual about it. So the same even with Assault on Precinct 13. We don't intellectualize because it takes away from the ability to act.
Right. Obviously, I assume that there was no big, you know, premiere for Assault on Precinct 13. So I'm curious, when in '76, when the movie was starting to play in theaters here and there, did you go see it, and what did you think when you saw it?
No, I never saw it at that time. See, that movie, let us assume there hasn't been a remake. The first is being made for the first time today. There'd be a great to-do about it, don't you think?
Yeah.
Probably a red carpet premiere and a whole bit. But back then, you know, there wasn't so much of that, you know. I mean, just think about it. Back then, there was no such thing as a DVD and all that stuff, and Blu-ray, and HD, and all that stuff.
When was the first time that you saw it? Do you remember?
The first time I saw it was there's a theater in downtown LA on Spring Street, a very busy area there. It reminds me, if you're familiar with New York, the way 42nd Street used to be. And two friends of mine, one is a performer, singer, and the other one was like a sort of a music producer. They wanted to see the film, wanted me to go with them. And I thought, gee, you know, I hate going out and, you know, I don't want people to recognize me making a fuss and ask me for autographs. And this is when the film first came out. So we went that night to see the movie, and I thought I would disguise myself. I was wearing a cap, you know, with a peak and everything, and sunglasses. It was in the evening, and we had to walk in about maybe 30 to 40 yards from the sidewalk, past the box office, to the entrance into the theater. And as we walked up, one of the ushers was standing there that works, works in the theater, and we walking by, and the guy just kind of glanced at me and said, "You're very good in that movie, Mr. Stoker." And we all three laughed. I thought, here I am, I'm not going to be recognized. I'm the guy, I guess he was watching the movie all week. So
right.
He saw me right away. So that's what I'm talking about.
Right. And when did you when did you become aware that it was becoming that it had a following, if you will? Because you're right. When it came out in '76, and it wasn't a studio film, so it
Right.
it moved around from theater to theater over a year or even 2 years, and then and then once it was done, because it wasn't a studio film, it I don't think it came on TV a lot. It was one of those films, you see it maybe every once in a while at 2 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it wasn't. So when did you become aware that, this film you'd done, now going 30 some odd years ago, it was starting to somehow people were starting to find out about it?
I would say like about maybe 5 years ago.
Wow.
Started realizing that it was very, very popular, and then people began, to recognize me from it after all those years, and it just wouldn't go away.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And they did the remake, and I was invited to a screening of the remake when I saw it and everything. And I even got Larry Fishburne even mentioned in a couple of his TV interviews that the character he was playing was my character's name in the original.
Right.
So they were still kind of relating to it,
Mm-hmm.
But it took all those years. It just kept alive.
Right.
So it was that many years after that I realized how popular it was, to this day.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you did see it, I mean, because obviously, a lot of what Carpenter, a lot of the finesse of the film, what makes the film so endearing is, I guess you could say, comes from John Carpenter's post-production, be it the editing of the action scenes and like we played earlier, the score and all that stuff. And so when you saw it and you saw what he had done, were you surprised and thrilled or excited that despite even though you were in the film, able to see the rest of it and see, wow, this is pretty good work.
Oh yes. The thing is, that's the bad thing, because when you see that, you see things that you could have done differently that may have been better if you did it differently. There were a couple of moments that I saw that I said, "Damn, I wish, we could have done that a couple more takes." I could see things that could have worked even better.
Right.
That's the bad part. Because don't have a big budget, you can't afford to do 15 and 16 and 25 takes.
Right. Right.
3 or 4 is enough. I mean, if it works, leave it alone.